Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Professional's Pulse. I am Farida Musaddi, the co founder and CEO of Fateh Technologies Dubai. Well, Fateh, as you all know, is a technology consultancy which is based in the hearts of Dubai, and we specialize in delivering innovative and complex tech solutions globally. With a strong focus on driving sustainable transformation, Alphatech Technology partners with governments and businesses to tackle the most pressing challenges in today's digital landscape. Our expertise spans across various sectors, including smart cities, renewable energy, and advanced data analytics, enabling our clients to harness the power of technology to achieve their strategic goals. At Alphateh, we are committed to bridging the gap between cutting edge technology and practical implementation, ensuring that our solutions are not only meet the current needs, but also pave the way to a sustainable and prosperous future. Well, in an era where the urgency to transition to renewable energy is more critical than ever, the gap between cutting edge technology and the global policies needed to implement them effectively remains a significant challenge. Today's episode of the Professional's Pulse delves into the intricate relationship between innovative renewable energy technologies and the global policy frameworks that can either accelerate or hinder their adoption. We will explore the complexities of aligning technological advancements with international regulations, the role of governments and private sectors, and the strategies necessary to bridge the gap, ensuring a sustainable energy future for all. And joining us today for this episode is Dr. Dominic. Hello, Dr. Dominic. How are you today? And thank you so
Hi,
much for
Farida.
joining us on the
Thank you.
Professionals Pulse.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for having me on your show. It's a pleasure.
It's an absolute honor to have you with us, sir, today.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here.
So, Dr. Dominic is a world leading authority in foreign policy, climate change, and renewable energy with an 18-year legacy in international transformation. Renowned for his dynamic partnerships with the United Nations, the oil and gas industry, and influential organizations, he has pioneered sustainability solutions at the intersection of policy innovation and global collaboration. Dr. Dixon's expertise in NET Zero strategies has guided diverse sectors in achieving actionable carbon reduction goals. His strategic council extends to global climate initiatives, shaping policies and practices that adhere to UNFCCC guidelines. Based in New York, Dr. Dixon continues to influence global progress, including his role in shaping the Middle East peace treaties through the Abraham Accords. Once again, Dr. Dominic, it's absolute pleasure to host you today, and
Thank you.
I am really looking forward to having a really interesting conversation with you.
Likewise, likewise.
So, to begin with, we all want to know about why is the need for renewable energy technology, and what exactly do we need to bridge this gap. What is the entire scenario about? Why is it so important today in the world, and what kind of practices are carried out under this domain?
Renewable energy has come as a plan B, so to speak, right? And
Yes.
as we were talking earlier about what are the challenges, the rapid advancements in renewable energy technologies, and like I said, renewable energy is nothing but a plan B. Uh, when plan B does not work, there's going to be plan C. When plan C does not work, we're going to go back to plan A. All right. Um,
Correct.
See, the primary challenge lies in the disparity between the speed at which renewable energy technology is advancing and the
Mm-hmm.
sluggish pace of global policy development. There
Absolutely.
could be a policy, but the implementation of the policy could take 10 years. By the time uh, the 10 years arrive, the technology becomes redundant, right?
Correct.
So,
That's true.
renewable energies, particularly solar and wind power. Now, these
Mm-hmm.
have tremendous strides in efficiency, scalability, and cost effectiveness because
Okay.
wind power is free. How do you harness it is the only thing that costs you a little money. For
Absolutely.
instance, the cost of photovoltaic power, it's called the PV power,
Mm-hmm.
the cost of that has dropped by 89% over the
Okay.
past decade. So
Okay.
those who tapped into it a decade ago have made millions. So those who are tapping it into now, tapping into this segment right now may not make the millions. So they are the ones who go for plan C or they go back to plan A, which is
Correct.
the use of fossil fuel. Now,
Absolutely.
uh, like I said, 89% of past decade make it one of the most accessible and scalable resources of energy globally because solar, you install the panels, wind, you harness it because and that becomes even more scalable. However,
Correct.
policy frameworks, these often take years, if not decades, to develop, to negotiate, and to implement. And
Correct.
this lag is due to several factors, which includes the complex nature of international negotiations, the need for consensus among a diverse group of stakeholders. For example, you take the GCC countries, the UAE may have a policy of its own, Bahrain has a policy of its own, Saudi
Correct.
Arabia has a policy of its own. Even within the GCC itself, there are there are contradictions. You
Every
take the
country has
European
its own.
Union, so there are complexities. So this is what causes the lag. And so what happens is why is this? Because of varying interest. Each nation has its own
Correct.
interest. And the inherent bureaucracy involved in formulating and enacting new regulations. Bureaucracy is the number one impediment, you know, to get things done. And
Uh,
the other part is the gap between technology and policy. It creates a scenario where innovative solutions are available, but it cannot be
mm-hmm.
fully utilized due to outdated, inadequate policies. Remember what I said? You negotiate for 10 years, at the 10th year, everything becomes redundant. So,
Correct.
this misalignment, what does it do? It creates a bottleneck where the deployment of new technologies is delayed. And this slows down the transition to a sustainable energy future. The chorus that
Correct.
the United Nations sings about sustainable development goals is only but a chorus and no very little progression.
Progress.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm one of the biggest critics of the United Nations. They've sent me emails and notices, and I said, "This is I'm a man of principles. I stand by the truth. I have a clean record, but your SDG goals are not feasible. Why? Because the United Nations no longer has a potency of
Okay.
implementing its policies because countries stop listening to them, right? So what happens is this.
Correct.
Now, these in no, so what happens is additionally to what I've just said, the inertia within the existing political and economic systems, heavily influenced by fossil fuel interests. This exasperates the challenges because countries say, look, we are an oil producing nation. You can't just come overnight and ask us to phase out or phase down. We have our own policies, you know. And
Correct.
countries who speak like that are accused of greenwashing. Um, and the hypocrisy is of Western nations. They polluted the planet more than any other so-called developing nation, and now they pontificate like they're all about green energy. I mean, you polluted the world already, right? So, and
Absolutely.
so what has happens is so the fossil fuel. there's a conflict constantly with the fossil fuel and the green energy movement. And these industries have significant lobbying power and often resist change that could disrupt the market dominance. And this makes it so much more difficult to align policies with technological advancements. Now,
Correct.
the oil companies have uh, technologies, tremendous amount of wealth for development of hydrogen power, or in the way they continue with fracking. But again, policies, at the helm of policies, there are issues. Let me give you an example so the audience would also understand. You take the
Correct.
Paris Agreement.
Mm-hmm.
The Paris Agreement was hailed as a hallmark in global climate policy, and it
Okay.
took years of intense negotiation before it was finalized in 2015. 2015, and we're in 2014, and still nothing much has happened. We have had 28 COP conferences.
Oh
Each
my
COP
goodness.
conference, yeah, each COP conference has brought like the COP 20 have brought in about almost 70,000 people in. Can you imagine uh, the pollution by flying down to Dubai? You know, and so it's a contradiction, right? And even now, many countries are still in the early stages of implementing the commitment under the agreement. Imagine the agreement in 2015, and countries are just beginning to implement it. Can you
Okay.
imagine that? West 2015, we are 2024. So,
Absolutely.
so, so meanwhile, the technology for offshore wind, battery storage, and electrical vehicles, these technologies have advanced rapidly.
Okay.
At the COP28, I was asked about why don't we just move into the EVs? I told them we could, but it's going to take a minimum of 25 years for that to happen. And they were
Correct.
shocked. And then two other presidents echoed the same what I echoed the previous day. And they said Dr. Dixon is right. It is going to take a minimum of 20 to 25 years to even think about all the diesel and the petrol vehicles being moved out. So these technologies are ready for widespread adoption, but the policies needed to integrate them into the global energy market, the policies are still catching up.
Okay.
And and this delay not only hinders the deployment of these technologies, but it undermines the momentum to achieve our climate targets. It's as simple as that.
Correct. So, according to you, which countries today you feel are more open and more flexible, or or have an easy approach towards these policies? Because you deal
No
with
country.
global. Okay.
There's absolutely no country that's willing to comply.
Okay.
For instance, you take uh, at the COP 26, we came up with a strategy of loss and damage. This
Okay.
was in Glasgow, Scotland, and COP 27 in Sharm el Sheikh in Egypt. Finally, they decided to go for $1 trillion in compensation,
Okay.
and we are yet to see the light of day of that. And the US was supposed to give out millions, hundreds of millions of dollars towards a loss and damage for what the US has polluted in the planet to the countries that have suffered. Like Bangladesh is the first country that has had climate refugees. So the money
Okay.
is supposed to go to Bangladesh first. But but John Kerry, the is a former U.S. Secretary of State, and he's the climate presidential representative for the U.S. He said, "I will not give a single dollar for loss and damage because we did not cause the damage." Is what he said. Again, a play of words. This is the exact same play of words where they use where the U.S. and the U.K. attacked Iraq, stating that a play of words that war existed. And the US continues to be the number one polluter. You take it per capita, you take it however you look at it, but still they pontificate. And no country, the US is supposed to be leading the world into the policy making because of the power they have, the influence they have. But if the US does not comply, no country is going to comply. The only region that seems to be working really hard towards this is the European Union. They have
Okay.
strict policies for implementation. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And you're also telling me, I mean, when we were having a conversation before this about COP26, uh, uh, about the declining of the usage of coal. Would you like to share that incident with us?
Absolutely. What has happened? What happened was during the COP26 in Glasgow, Scotland. I was right beside Prime Minister Modi, beside Boris Johnson, who was the Prime Minister of the UK, and other
Yeah.
officials, and uh, we were discussing about India's stand on the use of coal and the production of coal. And at COP26, COP26, Alok Sharma was the COP26 presidency. He's
Okay.
a member of parliament from Reading in the UK. So he clearly said that we have to stop the production and the uses of coal. And COP26 was all about that.
Okay.
So when we advised the prime minister that, look, use we will not comply. So Prime Minister Modi, when he had to deliver his speech, he said, "One world, one earth, one sun, one energy, and with one voice, we are not going to stop the use and production of coal in India." Every prime minister and president came lambasting at us. Bill Gates, I was sitting beside Bill Gates, and he asked me, "Did you have anything to do with this?" I said, "Yes, I do." And till now, Bill Gates, he doesn't speak to me. It's no loss to me. So, uh, Prime Minister Boris Johnson was flabbergasted. The European Union was really, really, I can't use words on air that they've used to describe their frustration, but they were quite peeved with what went on. And the Prime Minister Modi was also concerned about the backlash.
Correct. That's true.
But in India, we have the best of scientists, we have the best of data. So we said, look, we have data because we've invested billions into our coal productions, and we can't stop overnight. And so we were very clear on that. And then comes a little while later, then comes the war between Russia and Ukraine. Russia stopped exporting fossil fuel to Europe, and Europe was stuck. Germany reached out to India and said, "Can you please give us some coal?" I said, "We will gladly give you the coal." We inflated the prices, we sold coal to them. Then we said, "Look, didn't we tell you that coal cannot be stopped?" We did not stop there. We purchased the crude oil from Russia,
Okay.
refined it in India, and sold it to Europe. And we said, "See, where did we not tell you this at the COP26 in November 2021?" And they said, "Yes, you did tell us." So again, it was like Namaste Modi. So what happened is, because the European Union and other countries had uh, mud on the face because they came against India, they stated that India should label the oil that we started to export after refining it from importing the crude oil from Russia.
Russia.
They said that you got to name the oil as made in Russia. We said,
Mm-hmm.
why should we do that? Your iPhone parts were made in Taiwan, it assembled in China. Then you make put your products as made in China.
Correct.
So on all quarters we won. So COP26 we got a backlash, we suffered a backlash, but thereafter it was smooth sailing because everyone began to understand the vision that India has for the future in renewable energy as well, not just fossil fuel.
Correct. That's true. So, since we were talking about the challenges and how the global policies take years to change and finally to get implemented, which are the biggest barriers in there? Are they political? Are they economic? Are they social, that prevent these technologies from getting fully integrated into these global energy policies?
Okay, you've asked me two questions. One is the policies, and one are the barriers. Do you want me to answer both?
Yeah, what are, I mean,
All right. See,
why do the
structuring
policies?
global yeah, I got it. See, structuring global policies, right? Everything has to do with money. There are no questions
Absolutely.
about it. You and I
Absolutely.
work, we need money. There are corporates that are busy, there are greedy, they want excess, they cut corners. But structuring global policies to incentivize investment in renewable energy technologies, that is, especially in developing countries.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be focusing on developing countries, okay? Because this requires a multifaceted approach that addresses financial, regulatory, and collaborative dimensions. Remember what I
Correct.
said. The Western nations are polluted and they are pontificating, but they're not willing to collaborate with the so-called developing nations.
Developing countries,
So,
yes.
so what happens is, firstly, financial support mechanisms. Like I said, Bangladesh, the first country that suffered climate refugees. A lot of people
Okay.
don't even know this. Canada, I was in a particular province in Canada observing climatic conditions just last month. And that particular province, a particular city there in Jasper, they suffered climate refugees. The entire city was burnt down, and everyone had to flee that city. You know,
Oh my
so
goodness.
firstly, yeah, and firstly, there are financial support mechanisms has to be in place. One province backing up the other, one nation backing up the other. That is why we want a $1 trillion loss and damage fund. That is $1 trillion per annum, per annum.
Okay.
Because
Oh.
can you imagine? Yeah, can you imagine an entire city being burnt down? $1 trillion is nothing, you
And
know.
this is because of the
So
climatic changes?
exactly, because of the increase in heat levels, there are
Correct.
forest fires. Let me give you an
Yes.
example.
Yes.
Imagine there's a forest fire, huge forest, humongous forest fire in Sharjah.
Correct.
Entire Dubai would be enveloped with black smoke, with carbon, to the extent that if Dubai, you take Dubai for example, since you're in that region, I'm giving that as an example.
Absolutely.
Dubai, if there's a huge forest fire in Dubai, even Bahrain will be affected. Why? Because of the winds that blow in different directions. So
Directions.
when one city is affected,
It affects
multiple
the neighboring.
neighboring cities, exactly, neighboring provinces, neighboring countries get affected. Like when you have cyclone, when you have the monsoons in one state or province, the other state and province also
Get
experiences
affected.
torrential
Yes.
rainfalls.
Yep.
That's how climate works, because of the wind. So that
Okay.
is why we capture the wind power and we harness it. So these are all interconnected. So, like I
Coexist. Yeah.
said, yeah. Firstly, like I said, financial support mechanisms. And
Mm-hmm.
what sort of financial support mechanisms? Such as green bonds, carbon pricing, international climate funds. Now, these can play an instrumental role in de-risking investments in renewable energy projects. You go to any bank today,
Mm-hmm.
you'll find them talking about green bonds.
Okay.
Okay, why? Because even banks are moving into investments into renewable energy.
Okay.
Okay, and now these mechanisms, these provide investors with the confidence that their investments will yield returns. uh,
Correct.
if a bank is investing into a renewable energy segment, they want to know exactly what the returns are. Because, for instance, say if they invest $10 million into solar, installing solar panels, and then
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow there's a heavy cyclone and the solar panels are floating and they are damaged, how do they recover? Right?
Correct.
So investments have become smart as well. Now, additionally, the international financial institutions and the development banks, like you have the Abu Dhabi Development Bank, right? Now, these
Correct.
development banks, what they can do is this: they can offer low interest loans or guarantees for
Mm-hmm.
investments in these regions. If you look at the UAE, the UAE is heavily into renewable energy investments, you know,
Okay.
and also for capacity building. Classic example is in India, the International Solar Alliance. It's headed by my friend Dr. Ajay Mathur, who's appointed by the Prime Minister of India itself. Now,
Okay.
ISA is a prime example of how global policies can be structured to incentivize investment in renewable energy in developing countries. Now,
Okay.
the ISA was launched by India and France. Like how the United Nations is an intergovernment-based organization, the ISA is also an intergovernmental, treaty-based organization. It's an international body,
Okay.
and so the ISA aims to mobilize $1 trillion in solar investments by 2030. So I would be
Okay.
with them again on the 5th and 6th of September for the conference. Now, the ISA, it provides a platform for collaboration among countries with high solar potential, offering
Okay.
financial resources.
Support.
India, financial resources can come from a country like France.
Correct.
Technical expertise and policy guidance can come from a country like India. That
India.
is why these two countries
That's a
were
treaty. Yes.
exactly formed this. Now I think there are about over 100 countries that are part of the ISA.
Oh,
Now,
okay.
by creating a favorable environment for investment, the ISA has already begun to accelerate deployment of solar energy in regions that were previously undeserved. So what
Okay.
happens? There's some reasons. You take Bangladesh. So I'm going to come back to that. Nobody wanted to do anything in Bangladesh. Now, with the type of technology and the policies that we have come up with, that the ISA has come up with, we can now see we've demonstrated effectiveness basically.
Correct.
How? With global policies that drives renewable energy adoption. We have come up with a policy. We've pioneered it. We have seen the money come in. Quite a bit of money
Okay.
is already coming, and we're going by 20. In another 5 years, we're going to come up to $1 trillion, and I'm sure it's going to
Okay.
increase to that. So that was my response to the policies. Now, in terms of the biggest barriers, I'm going to get a little political, so you'll have to bear with me on this. The
Sure.
integration of renewable energy technologies into global energy policies, these face significant barriers across political, economic, and social dimensions. Now, political, where there's a national policy level, uh, economic, where there are companies like the Adani Group in India, they have the power to do it. They have the money to do it, and they walk in line with the government policies as well. So there's a union of what can be implemented, whether you like it or not. This is how the world functions. There are U.S. policies. Then came the Tesla vehicles, and everybody jumped on on the bandwagon of the Teslas. And I, for one, said EV vehicles, the electric vehicles are not the solution. They are never the solution. And somebody said, why? I said, to make one battery, to make a battery for an EV, for an electric vehicle, there are thousands of components that go into that one battery. And the
Absolutely.
energy used to make each of those thousand components, then the shipping costs, the fuel that's being burnt. So so you have to look at what goes behind that.
Correct.
So
That's
politically, the influence of fossil fuel industry remains a formidable obstacle. The fossil fuel oil producing nations are the number one obstacle. They have their own reasons for it. Okay,
correct.
you can't wake up 28 years ago and say, "Oh, this is what's required," and 28 years later, after COP 20, and nothing has happened. So nobody's taken the UNFCCC seriously, basically. you know
Correct.
and for me, I think the UNFCCC, that's a climate
the climate body of the UN, needs to do something more than just having these conferences, you know.
Correct.
And so to continue, the obstacles are not necessarily bad that the fossil fuel industry is blocking. Why is it not bad? Because it's not easy to phase out the usage of fossil fuel. Like how India, we said we will not phase out fossil fuel, we may phase down, but you
Correct.
leave it to us. You don't
Correct.
come and dictate what India needs to do. We know our country better. You know,
That's true.
like I said, it would take a minimum of 25 years to even start to phase out fuel based vehicles to EVs. It will take 25 years to even start to phase out. So keep your car, don't sell your car if it's not an EV. But that said, these industries have deeply entrenched interest in maintaining the status quo.
Correct.
Why? Because they have the lobbying power to resist policies. If you take an
That's
ADNOC in the UAE, if you take the ONGC, you take in Canada, you take Alberta, you take Sunco, you take Syncrude, they are not going to listen to any government. You can come up with all the policies you want because these fossil fuel companies contribute majorly to the GDP of the country, of the respective
true.
country.
That's
So
true.
the country is not going to go after them, right? And
Correct.
like I said, now uh, the resistance that I spoke about can manifest in various forms, such as uh, delaying the passage of renewable energy legislation,
Mm-hmm.
because
Okay.
there's no law. See, we're not living in a dictatorial economy anymore, uh,
Correct.
because legislation is consulting the fossil fuel industry and asking, hey, what is going on?
Correct.
Okay, so the resistance can manifest in a form where the legislation, this can weaken the enforcement of existing regulations, where the fossil industry goes to the legislation and says, look, please, you can't do this, and they can give their own data.
Okay.
Okay, and the legislation has to listen to these companies. Why? Because economically, the high upfront cost that's associated with renewable energy infrastructure, they pose a significant barrier. Is the US going to give $10 trillion to the developing nations and say, here, just go and implement renewable energy? No.
No.
So how can you sit in the West and pontificate that to developing nations? So particularly in developing nations where financial resources are limited, this is the problem. Now,
Correct.
while renewable energy technologies like solar and wind are becoming increasingly cost competitive, it's becoming privatized. Like earlier, to pay your bill, in you take the context of India or most countries, your power bill is being paid to the government. But
Yes.
with renewable energy, there are privatized companies that have solar energy. So ultimately, the government is going to lose a lot of money with privatization of this. So the government is also going to be slow in the policy. You see that?
True.
So
True.
because it becomes cost effective, the initial capital
It's
required for
actually a
installation.
chain.
Absolutely, you're
Chain of
absolutely right.
reaction. Yes.
You're
Absolutely.
absolutely right. See, for example, you take the United States. Uh, in the United States, the fossil fuel industry has been significant. The fossil fuel industry has been a significant political force. The
Okay.
industry itself has been a political force, often lobbying against comprehensive renewable energy policy. So when John Kerry comes and speaks like he's a savior of the world, representing the US, and with the political power he has the fossil fuel lobby behind him, whispering into his ears what he's supposed to echo. If he
Correct.
comes with a purity of intentions, by now we would have implemented policies, but policies are not being implemented now.
True.
So, despite the technological feasibility and the economic viability of transitioning to renewables, this political resistance has slowed legislative progress. For example, efforts to implement a federal clean energy standard. Now, every policy has to have parameters, right? So, efforts to implement a federal clean energy standard of carbon pricing, these have faced strong opposition from fossil fuel interest. And what happens? Delays and watered down policies.
Correct.
Do you understand? So,
Correct.
so, so, so the political barriers, this political barrier reiterates the need for a greater public awareness and advocacy to counter. To we have to counter these influences because
Correct.
if everybody is talking about everyone's talking about green energy, and most people that I see talking about green energy and climate change don't know the first thing about climate change, and they don't know the second thing about renewable energy. It's just jumping on the bandwagon. You
Bandwagon.
see what I've shared with you today. It's a gamut of information. People don't
Correct.
know about the complexities that with the political class and the fossil fuel lobbying. The fossil fuel lobbying, I'm talking about billions of dollars to stop policies. And
True.
I don't
That's true.
blame them for that because they've invested trillions. And why should they lose their oil companies? They will not do that.
No, no, no. They will not
So,
do that.
we so yeah,
It's
so
a
we have to
different
be
game
aware. It's
altogether.
practical. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a different
absolutely.
game and a different world altogether out there. There are a certain section of people, companies who are actually controlling everything which is happening. So,
Exactly.
for any idea to be implemented at large globally, it has to take a lot of, determination from the policymakers. I think a lot of I don't know, but agreement from different global this thing, and maybe a very strong way by which these can be implemented at a quicker pace. Because, as you said,
Absolutely.
9 years down the line, and countries have now just started thinking about
Exactly.
going in for the change.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we don't know, maybe down the years, 20 years down the lines, we would still be at the same situation.
Yeah, please don't sell your diesel or petrol car. I spoke about lobbying, right? You look at the most famous climate activist Greta Thunberg. Do you think that she's not backed by some lobbyist? Who do you
Yeah,
think is paying her bills? There's
correct.
some organization, there's some entity that's paying her bills, right? So so there are very few people who have the right intention and who want to go in the right direction. And I
True.
can clearly say that one region that's going in the right direction is the European Union.
Okay.
They are people who find Apple computers millions of dollars. So they have no humbug about what they want to do, what they want to do, and the action they want to take.
Okay. So we are also talking about technology, and today we know that technology is just growing by leaps and bounds. There's AI, there's data analysis, where we have strong algorithms, we have strong tools which can predict what will happen down the line. So, don't you think these strong technology equipments or the tools that we have, the algorithms that we have, can help? The people to make these policymakers visualize as to what would happen. As you said, down the line, electric vehicles would phase down, and a lot of other things would, go back to what it was before. So, can this not be shown, or can this not be accelerated by using or harnessing technology? Because technology is just growing by the day. um, can't that be used? As your team also, as you said, you have an entire team who analyzes the climate changes of each and every region, and that is how you can predict what would happen down the line, maybe 10 years, 12 years thereafter. So Can't technology be used strongly at this point of time to influence the policymakers?
Absolutely, you can bring the best policies in place, but the will to implement the policy. Exhibit A that I present to you, 2015, the Paris Agreement. We're in 2024. What has happened? Nothing. COP28, for the last 28 years, conferences have happened. Imagine during COP1, had we decided to phase out fossil fuel in COP1, by now we would all be driving EVs,
Correct.
isn't it?
Yes.
You
Fossil fuel
think,
will be eradicated.
yeah, exactly. You think in COP1 they did not have this on the agenda? They did. In so from it took them 25 years to start EVs. Don't you think this technology existed 25 years ago as well?
Absolutely. Yes.
But this was being blocked. You know, it's all
And
about
even today, it's
policy.
not so powerful.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you're talking about AI and technology. Let me fill you in on this. Policymakers can utilize technology forecasting. You're talking about forecasting and
Yes. No
yeah,
worries.
the technological forecasting, right? Oh,
Yeah.
using tools. See, technological forecasting, it involves, I'm going to give a panoramic view, what entails forecasting. Because you asked about how do we do this. Technological forecasting involves using data driven models and
Mm-hmm.
scenario analysis to predict the future trajectory of emerging technologies. Okay, so we
Absolutely.
have scenarios. We've taken worldwide scenarios. I have a team of I said 1,500 doing this job. Uh, so by anticipating how renewable energy technologies would evolve, remember what I said? 10 years policy does not work right now. Okay, so by anticipating how renewable energies would evolve, policymakers can design policies that are flexible. A lot of policies are not flexible. That's the biggest problem.
True.
Policies are flexible, you are forward looking, and
Correct.
and then you have the capacity of adapting to new innovations as they emerge. And one approach to adapt to one approach to establish dedicated research institutions or think tanks that specialize in technology, like Dubai has a lot of think tanks of technological forecasting and
Correct.
for renewable energy for that matter. For instance, the way now Dubai, most buildings have glass are made of glass, right? I mean, the buildings are not, but the glass panels. But what sort of glass panels do you use that does not cause the sunlight to damage the inside environment of a room? Non-reflecting glasses. So a lot of research has gone into that as well. Because if the sun hits
Absolutely.
the bounces off the glass, it causes the region itself to be more hot. So what panels does the UAE use? So a lot of research has gone into that technology, and this did
Correct.
not happen overnight.
Absolutely.
So
That's
the UAE has been involved in this research for over a decade.
correct.
So that's one of the approaches. Now, these institutions can work closely with governments. Remember what I said? A lot of think tanks that are in Dubai, they can work closely with governments. They can work with closely with government energies, and industry stakeholders as well. Those who want to invest, the academia that ensure that policy decisions are formed. The academia advises the government, and vice versa. So planning is extremely important. Now, a classic example is the European Union's Strategic Energy Technology Plan. They call SET plan, the SET
Okay.
plan.
Okay.
This is an excellent example of how technological forecasting can inform policy development. The SET plan identifies priority areas for renewable
Okay.
energy research,
Mm-hmm.
and development, and this is based on detailed forecasting of technological trends. They don't just dump the gun. You have a government policy, but you also have a scientific approach. In
Okay.
countries like the US, it's more on a governmental policy and less on scientific research, but they tend to present the scientific research which is influenced by government policies. Why? Because they polluted the planet and now pontificating. I'm a major
Correct.
critic of the US policies because of that. I love the US, and I have many friends. I have a lot of government officials who are my friends as well. So
Okay.
by focusing on emerging technologies such as hydrogen is a big thing in the UAE itself. Uh, Focusing on hydrogen, next generation batteries, and smart grids, the EU, the European Union, ensures that its energy policies are aligned with the most promising innovations. So there's
Okay.
consultation, like you said, in a circular momentum. Use the right word earlier. It's all interconnected. And this
Absolutely.
forward looking approach enables the EU to quickly integrate new technologies as they mature. And
Correct.
this has positioned itself as a global leader in renewable energy. You see, you can have a policy, 10 years, they said, okay, let's implement this technology, but by the time the 10 years has arrived, it's redundant. There's no
True.
maturity.
True.
So there has no flexibility in enhancing the technology and implementing it. So it's not like you arrive at the 10 years and say, oh, this technology is redundant, let's develop another. No, it doesn't work that way. It's not like
True.
fixing a software bug. No, unfortunately, these technologies are not just software, it's hardware implementation as well.
Correct.
So that's the aspect of how the European Union handles it.
Okay. Well, Dr. Dixon, I think these insights that we've got for you from you, um, as you correctly said, people talk about renewable energy and people talk about climatic change, but how many of them actually know what is happening out there, at the top level, where the decision makers sit, how the decisions are influenced? So I think the kind of guideline or the kind of projection that you've given us today into that area has been absolutely enlightening. We actually, even I got to know so many different things, how the world operates, how the policies are made. And as you correctly said, uh, by the time the policies are uh, being changed, the technology or whatever was proposed is already stagnated. So I think any last words that you would want, as to how this can be streamlined?
Yeah, thank you for the question because um, the buzzwords that we hear today are sustainable development goals, sustainability. But if you ask people, many people, what is sustainability? And they're like, blah, blah, blah. They don't. So
I
I want to
agree.
give an example of the SDGs for implementation so that our audience is aware of it. I'm sure most of your audience are already educated in this. But for those who are not in this spectrum of things, this may be helpful. You see, in many African countries, despite the availability of cost effective solar technologies, the lack of supportive policies has led to slow adoption rates.
Correct.
It's cost effective, but who's going to give them the money to implement it?
True.
Because the African countries are rich, but the Western nations have looted from the African countries like the British has looted from India. You know, and and the African countries are still suffering, and the African Union is not united. If only they are united, they would be leaders leaders in renewable energy. So
Okay.
there's been a delay, and this delay in deploying renewable energy solution, it hampers progress towards SDG 7. Okay, and has a ripple effect on other goals such as reducing poverty, which is SDG 1.
Correct.
You see, it goes by what you prophetically said. It's all interconnected.
Yes,
I'm happy you
absolutely.
brought that up. It's circular. If there's no energy, how do you overcome poverty? How
True.
do you or how do you overcome promoting health and well-being, as which is SDG 3? I mean,
True.
if there's no proper energy in hospitals in Africa, I feel like crying when I'm saying this. Hospitals in Africa don't have proper powers. They don't have proper power, electricity. Patients are dying or on ventilators when the power goes off. If solar power, if renewable energy is implemented in African nations, poverty will be reduced. Alleviation of poverty, promoting good health and well-being, SDG 3. For example, without access to renewable energy, hospitals in rural areas may struggle to provide essential services. You take villages in India itself, and children may lack the electricity that's needed to study at night.
True.
So the gap between technology and policy, therefore, not only affects energy access, but also impedes broader socio-economic development and efforts to
Yes.
achieve SDGs. And we continuously speak about climate commitments. So in closing, I want to give you an example of, let's go back to Europe. Okay. Now, if you see, I'm talking about the GCC, talk about Asia, about India in particular. I'm talking about the European Union, and I'm talking about the North American region. So I'm giving you a global perspective. You take Denmark. Denmark is a leading example of how a country that has successfully aligned its renewable energy policies. You can look it up. Its renewable energy policies with technological capabilities. You can
Okay.
have the technological capabilities, but the will to implement the policies is not in many countries. Denmark is leading. Now, the Danish government, they have set up a target to achieve 100% renewable energy by the year 2030. Sorry,
Okay.
Denmark is 2050. So they want to achieve 100% renewable energy in its energy mix by 2050. Now, they have an interim target of 2030 and 2040. Now, this is why I like them. They said 2050 is our ultimate target, but we will have checks and balances. We will check 2030, we will check 2040 as well. And these targets are supported by a comprehensive policy framework that includes subsidies for renewable energy. You use renewable energy, your tariffs are low.
True.
And then there are investments in research and development by the government itself to institutions. And they have measures to promote energy efficiency that's not in most countries. It's not even there in the US. So Denmark also regularly revises its energy policies to incorporate the latest advancements. They don't wait for 10 years. There are parameters throughout the year.
True.
How? They have offshore wind and energy storage. Offshore. They don't
Okay.
just store it on land, they have offshore. And this ensures its target. Now, this by having your offshore storage, you can ensure your target is ambitious, not just ambitious, but achievable. And in conclusion, this proactive approach has made Denmark a global leader in renewable energy. And I think this is a benchmark for other countries to follow.
Agreed.
So, to our listeners today, take a look at Denmark's renewable energy policy and ask your government to look into it.
Dr. Dominic, thank you so much once again for joining us and for this enlightening session. It's been an absolute
Pleasure
honor
is
to have
mine.
you with us.
Pleasure is mine. Pleasure is mine. Thank you so much for this time, and thank you to our audience as well.
Absolutely. So, as we sign off, we continue to navigate these complexities of global energy transitions. And as Dr. Dominic said, that uh, we need, or the policymakers need to bridge this gap between technology and policy so that we come up with sustainable solutions, we come up with a more conducive and better environment for society at large. And as we all heard, Dr. Dominic's unwavering commitment to sustainability and international collaboration reminds us that together we can create a more resilient future. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this journey towards a greener world. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Thank you.